Oh, wow, dude, this changes everything for VR golf. All right, so that's right. Today we're talking about this, the DriVR, D-R-I-V-R. Let's see what you did there. We see you. We're gonna talk about whether this changes the game for VR golf. And VR golf, no doubt, has been having a real revolution lately. We're seeing it grow wildly in popularity with the introduction of the Quest 2, and now there's even a newer version. We did a recent video on this. We talked about it, and we talked about how to make it more realistic with this controller. And what we got now is the next stage in the evolution of that. We're gonna talk about why it's different. We're gonna talk about why it matters. But one thing that we're seeing, Mike, is with VR in general, especially on that Golf Plus game, is that you're starting to see more courses roll out. Pinehurst recently, I believe Pebble Beach. You're even starting to see some golfers, professional golfers, attach their name to it. Rory McIlroy's doing a little bit more with it. So the writing's on the wall that VR golf is here to stay, and it's going to continue to evolve and become bigger and bigger.
And not only is it here to stay, but it's fun. And the way that this started for me is without these, it was almost like Wii Golf, virtually. It was swinging this, it didn't work. Then this came about. If you didn't see that video, go check it out. We had a lot of fun with this. This worked well, but then this came and it kind of knocked my socks off.
Yes, and we're going to talk about why here, because ultimately the big thing and the big worry that we saw a lot of people talk about in the comments is that it's not going to feel real. It's going to mess up your swing or something like that, because swinging this, it's incredibly light. The controller itself, we weighed everything, and the controller itself with battery weighs 153 grams. Now, as a reference point, I weighed my pitching wedge here, and now there's different variations depending on what shaft you have and things like that, but golf clubs are more similar in their weight than they are different, and the golf club itself weighs 452 grams. So there's a huge difference between just the controller and the club, and as you're swinging it, you feel it. It doesn't feel real. You just kind of feel like you're swatting at it.
Right, exactly.
And I think that was the big limitation. Well, just about a year ago, introduction to this from Deadeye VR was a really cool invention in that it gave you a real golf grip. It gave you a way to feel more like you were holding onto a golf club when you were swinging it. Now, this itself is really just a grip and this 3D printed end here, which holds the Oculus controller. I weighed this, and this weighs 283 grams. So less than a golf club, but when paired with that, it becomes much closer. That's a total weight of 436 grams.
So close to the pitching wedge.
Much closer to the pitching wedge, but still shy of the total weight of the pitching wedge. Now, I know what you're wondering, what's the weighting on this? We're gonna get into that in a second, but the other thing that's so crucially important is not just the weight, but where the weight is. Because in a golf club, most of the weight is in the head. So the realism is that feel of swinging something with weight that's further away from your body. So the new edition does two things, and this is it basically how it comes, and it comes with these pieces that hold the controller, which just get bolted on. So we lift this one apart, and this is one that's been assembled. Most of the weight here is in this rubber nub. So not only is it more weighted like a club, it's moving the weight further away from the handle to feel more like a golf club. Now, you're gonna wonder what's the weighting on this. Well, interestingly, this by itself weighed in at 452 grams, exactly to the gram, exactly the same weight as my pitching wedge.
Okay, but you gotta put the controller on.
You gotta put the controller on. So remember, that does add a little bit more weight. So now we're talking about with the controller, the 153 gram controller, it's 605 grams in total with the controller, which, to be honest, is starting to feel a little bit weighty. It's by no means does it feel cumbersome. I mean, give that a feel. It doesn't feel like something you can't swing, but it's got some weight to it. Now, I'm no engineer. I think this thing was very well designed. My question would be, why not weight this a little bit shy of where it would be so that your total weight accounts for the controller? I think that might be a little bit, less of a jump, because it is a dramatic difference in weight from what we had with this. But the idea behind this, again, is a couple things. One is it gets a feel of an actual grip in your hand. It is a real golf grip. It's got a portion of a real shaft in there, and then it's got this rubber weight on the end that creates the weight like a golf club. I think the most crucial thing, it's nice to have the weight that's closer to a golf club. I think the most crucial thing is moving the weight out further. Now, the other question a lot of you asked in our last video when we did about this was, well, can I just take this piece here and attach it to my golf club? And the answer is kind of yes. I mean, in theory, you could attach this down on your golf club itself and then put your VR controller in there and swing the golf club itself. The ultimate net weight is going to be the same because remember, the weight of the club is the same as the weight of this. So if you add a controller to it, you're still in that weight, same weight, that's 605 grams. The reason why I would strongly suggest you not do that, and the other benefit of something like this is actually its compact size. Keep one thing in mind. Once you're in those goggles, you can't see your surroundings. And to me, swinging a golf club, a full-length golf club around with those goggles on, I mean, you could take the necessary safety precautions to make sure no one's around you, but you know, God forbid one of the kids or somebody walks near you. It's a little bit safer to be wielding this than this because of the huge swing arc. But the other thing I like about it too is you can do this in your living room.
That's
it's
what
also,
I'm saying.
there's a reason that this, you got thinking of hot ceilings and accountability. So I don't personally see the benefit. I understand why the question was asked of people wondering, but I don't see the benefit of attaching a controller to this.
I think at that point you get a flight, you get a launch monitor, you get a simulator if you want to use real clubs.
Right, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be hitting real balls. It would be near impossible because you won't be able to see the ball. Remember, everything is happening in the virtual experience. So going back to that, and we're going to hit this in just a second. We're going to get inside the goggles, we're going to swing it. But getting back to that, what it really comes down to is making this as realistic as possible. And there was one other thing that you guys very astutely noted in our last video. As we were using this club, we noticed that the ball was going further than we hit it in real life. It's a real feel good when you're driving the ball 300 plus yards. But if we're going for realistic, we want to know what was the reason. And as many of you pointed out, I think most of you definitely got A in physics. As you move the controller further away, it's moving faster. So the game is accounting for you having this in your hand. And when you've got it further out, you're actually creating more speed, or at least it thinks you're creating more speed, and you're hitting the ball further. The good news is the people at Deadeye VR have accounted for this, and they've sent along instructions that we can do, and this is cool that Golf Plus game allows you to do this. We're gonna hop in the goggles, we're gonna show you this right now. We're gonna go through the settings that you can change that will change the sensitivity of the controller to account for the added weight and length. So what we should end up with is much, much more accurate playing experience. It's gonna feel more accurate, and the response to the ball is gonna be more accurate.
I love it.
So there's nothing left to do but hop into the goggles. So let's do that now. We're gonna go through those settings really quick, show you what it takes to make the settings where you need them to be for this, and then we're gonna swing a couple and tell you how real or not real it feels to us. All right, so this is super simple. Now we're gonna go and get this set up. So I go into settings here in the Golf Plus app, and we go to controls. And one thing you'll notice, if you scroll down just a bit, there's already a number of pre-made controllers that if you just click on it, the system will know all of the changes it needs to make it as realistic as possible. So there's a bunch of them here, and if you're, depending on when you're watching this video, this brand new Deadeye controller may even be available in here. But for right now, it's not. As you can see, the one that's highlighted there is the older model that we've used in the past. So instead, we're just gonna click on custom here. And what I'm gonna do is you hold down the side trigger on the controller, and then you just kind of look at the club and place it where you feel like the grip would be in your hand and where the controller would be. The club is frozen in space. And then when you've got the right spot, you just kind of let go. And now when I'm looking down, instantly my mind just makes the adjustment and the club feels so real, the weighting. Even all that stuff we said before about being heavier, I'll be very honest, it doesn't feel it in my hand right now. But what it did is it locked the controller about halfway down the shaft. So now looking down, where my hands and my mind are on that grip, and the controller is where it really is in space. So it's set up. Next thing to do is let's take a couple swings with it, That's as simple as a setup as you can imagine it being. All right, so we're on the range here. I mean, we've gone over how cool this looks in the last video. This is the reason why we want this to be so realistic, because visually it's stunning the way this is. I am on the range and I've got a 7-iron in my hands. Like I said, just the feel of it, I feel the weight, the majority of it like it's in the club head. Revolutionarily more like a club than holding the controller or even the old version. So I've got a 7-iron. Usually I hit a 7-iron about 165. So we're gonna see if this combination of the settings and this make it a bit more realistic here. What did I say, Mike?
165.
164.
There you go. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Let's hit another one real quick. So whereas before when we had just no settings, I was hitting it probably like 10 to 15 or even more yards further. Now I'm hitting it about the distance I hit my real 7-iron. So we're gonna hit one more here. And what I'm looking at here, it's kind of cool, just as I'm turning the club in my hand, just looking at that face opening and shutting, another thing that makes it so much more realistic. So I can kind of set that club face where I want, that looks like the right way, to my target, and swing away. Good shot there down the middle. Let's see what kind of distance we get. Boom, that was a better shot. 165 carry, 168 total. Mike.
Realistic, right?
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
So now the ultimate test. Let's pull out the driver and see how far we hit it.
Let's go.
All right, now we got the big stick in hand here, the driver. And the other thing, like I said, that I really do like is it feels like if I'm turning the ball a certain way, the club face is shutting. I'm just looking at this in slow motion. It feels exactly like where the club would be. It makes it even more immersive because at some point my mind starts to get tricked into believing it's real because it's reacting so realistically. But driver here, I unfortunately am not the guy who's pumping it over 300
But you should
yards.
see about 265-ish, right?
What
if it's
I
accurate.
should see, yeah, a good drive for me is going to be about 265. Previously, I was in at 300 in here. If I get anywhere near 300, something's wrong. .285, 279 carry.
Okay.
So we're not hitting the 300 numbers. I hit that one even a little bit further than I normally would, but maybe 10, 15 yards. Let's try one more because I think, like I said, it's probably going about 10, 15 yards further than what I'm used to, but still, it's entering into a much more realistic space than it ever was before. But one thing I can't describe here, I can show you my yardages. One thing I can't make you feel is what I'm feeling is how realistic this truly feels. And like I said, it's much safer and I can work in a lower ceiling swinging something like this than strapping this on a golf club. All right, so final thoughts, the driver by Deadeye VR. It sells for $69.95, and what I'm gonna tell you is putting the stamp of approval on this thing. I know that 70 bucks can be costly, but in my experience, it is a night and day experience playing this Golf Plus game. Without it, it's just doesn't have the realistic feel. It's gimmicky. You play it for a couple minutes and you're done. With this controller, I feel like I could get lost in this thing for hours. So guys, let us know what you think and let us know if you have any questions in the comments below if you want us to do a follow-up video on anything additional with this. But we wanted to show you this one because we really think it's going to change the game for VR golf. It's incredibly realistic. Go and give it a try for yourselves, and we'll see you in the next video.